Hey teachers, it's Tim here. Just wanted to let you know that on November 6th, I'm running one of my most popular online workshops. It's called the 6 Cores of Music Teaching and Studio Business Success. This practical workout, complete with a 2-page handout, involves a critical visioning exercise, finding out where you sit on the integrated music teaching matrix, and of course, unpacking where you rank on the 6 cores. Even if you've participated before, you can use this time to reset your vision and find out where you've improved on the 6 core rankings and therefore where to focus your energy for maximum impact in the next 6 months. And if you've heard about our top-level 12-week studio transformation program that we open the doors to twice a year in January and July, then attending this workshop is the first step in getting a place in the next cohort. And because it's so popular, I'll be running the workshop at 2 time zones to suit everybody around the world. Head to topmusic.co/workshop to secure your free place. Can't wait to see you then. You're listening to The Topcast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at Top Music is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. Hi teachers, welcome back to the Topcast. Thank you so much for joining me and spending a little bit of your day with me. It's always a pleasure, and it's wonderful to think about what you might be doing as you're listening to this. Are you washing up? Are you cooking? Are you on the gym treadmill? Hello to all the gym goers. Are you walking your dog, or are you just out for a walk? Wherever you are, thank you so much for spending this time with me and using it to hopefully improve the way that you teach and go about your studio practices, because it's all going to rub off and improve the outcomes for your students. That's what I hope anyway. So thank you so much for spending this time with me today. So last week you met today's guest. Dr. Edward Gifford was featured last week in the episode where we shared a vintage piano lesson from 1984. He was the actual teacher in that video, and today we get to actually hang out with him and meet him. And we're going to be covering quite a few aspects of his life today. We'll be running it a little bit like a narrative, going through some of the things that he's done over time, because it's really, really interesting, and he's quite a fascinating character. So we'll be talking about teaching in the 1980s and what it was like, and how he came to be the pretty progressive teacher that you heard in last week's episode, really focused on singing and movement and whole body learning. So we'll find out how that came about. We'll then talk a bit about burnout. Sadly, he had a complete burnout, and we'll talk about some strategies around avoiding that if this is something that you worry about or something that you're feeling at the moment, and how he then transitioned into helping other people avoid that and becoming an author and a life coach. And then towards the end of the episode, we're going to be talking about a shocking diagnosis that he's had to deal with in the last 2 or 3 years and how he has been beating and coping with that. It's an incredible episode, and I thank my guest Edward today so much for being so open about sharing this journey with us. Prior to starting his life coaching business, today's guest was a senior lecturer in music education, involved in undergrad and postgrad teacher education within the university sector for some 20 years in WA, Tasmania and Queensland. He's also author of children's music books, Read and Play the Singing Way, and another book that we'll talk about in today's episode. In 1991, Edward completed his PhD in music education at the University of London. He took up his first tertiary education teaching post in Tasmania back in 1982 and moved to Gifford University in Queensland in 1987. In 1998, due to a significant life-changing event, which brought his academic career to a sudden end, Edward reinvented his career to become a coach, trainer, speaker, and author. Much of this period was also taken up in business coaching for small business owners. We're going to find out all about it today. Welcome to the show, Edward Gifford. Thanks so much for joining me.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm just so delighted that I can share some history from 40 years back with you and your wonderful teachers and listeners. So thank you for having me.
And more recent history. We're going to really sort of cover a fair bit of your life, some of the sort of defining moments and how they can be used by teachers. So I'm excited to unpack it. But I want to remind teachers that Edward should be familiar to you if you listened to last week's episode, where we actually heard, and you may have seen the video as well, Edward teaching Beck Stewart, who's one of our top music team members, as a child. So, just quickly, for those of you who might have missed that episode, I'm going to play a short clip from that lesson now, where Edward is using some whole body movement and singing to reinforce some music for our very young Beck. Here it is.
Hold the handle up and down, then the top will spin around, humming softly as it spins, quickly wind it up again. All right, let's put all the words into our feet. Where we go? Ready? Pull the handle up and down, then the top will spin around, humming softly as it spins, quickly wind it up again. Can we do it to teas and tars? You have a go on your own. All right? Tee 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 tar, tee 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 tar, tee 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 tar, tee 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 tar. Cheating. Black nuts.
So, Edward, can you tell me a little bit about your teaching back at that time? Where, how many students? Were you at home, at a school? Tell me a bit about it.
This is when I was working with Beck.
Yeah.
Well, previous to that, I'd come from Western Australia, and that's my home.
Oh, I didn't know that. Where did you grow up in WA?
Well, little town called Bridgetown, Broad, but educated in Perth. But I had my private students back then, and I remember one day a lady from the local kindergarten, as it was called then, said, "Oh, could you come around and do a bit of music with our kids after school?" So I went around and she got 7 together. And then the next week there's 14, next week there was 30. And so we had to split the groups. But we were doing singing and dancing and body movement and percussion and music games. And so I had that background when I came to Tasmania, and when I worked with Beck and others there, it wasn't just a piano lesson, it was a lot of singing games. By the time they got to the actual piano, they had the music all through their body. That we did a lot of work with movement and obviously singing games and pitch patterning and time names. I had the background of Kodai and Orville there, and also Suzuki as well. So yes, there was never, the teacher here and the pupil there and a bit of music up from there. I don't think I ever remember doing that. And if it was mainly, might have been one lesson only in my life.
Well, it's really interesting because there's lots more talk now about Kodai and Orff, and we in fact ran a course earlier this year about whole body learning, incorporating all of these elements and ideas: Suzuki, singing, rhythm, percussion, body movement, getting off the bench. We've talked about it for years and years as being the best way to do it. But I want to know, how were you doing it back then? Because you would have been a bit of an outlier, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no one else was doing it. Not in terms of private music teaching. There were those sort of things. Certainly in private music teaching, of course, there was a lot happening in music in schools with Kodai. It was very big in the 70s and 80s in New South Wales, particularly in WA. And offshore work was very popular in WA too. I remember being immersed in all of those. When I went to London I took a visit across to Hungary and a visit to Salzburg, and actually go to the Orff Institute and to meet some of the Kodai experts. And and I wrote a little book just before we went away called Read and Play the Singing Way. And the publishers, in their wisdom, renamed them my first recorder book and my second recorder book, which is the opposite to the whole ethos of what I wanted to do.
How boring.
Yes. But anyway, they sold over 100,000 copies in Australia alone, so they must have had something. I wanted to write a teacher's guide, but never got around to doing that. But Anyway, my first recorder lesson, for example, every kid in the class could play 6 songs because they'd already learnt them back to front. They'd done singing games, they'd done time names, they'd done pitch patterning using solfa and body parts, and they had the music all infused in them. So it was just a matter of the little concentrating on the technique because they didn't have to worry about the music because it was all infused and integrated into their bodies.
Yeah, and this is the great advantage of this approach. Rather than sitting someone down and going, okay, here are the dots, here are the notes, here's where they are on the piano, let's play them. No, take the time before that to embed it in their body and embed the rhythm, embed the melody, embed the tune by singing.
And that was the advantage of Suzuki as well. I mean, they didn't do all the other things, but at least these kids would have listened to all of their beautiful pieces over and over and over and over again until they could sing it, they could know the rhythm of everything. They just knew the music inside out before they even had to worry about technique.
And if you do it in an interesting way, that repetition isn't mindless and boring. It can be quite interesting.
Absolutely. Now let's put the words into our feet, let's put the words in our fingers, let's put the words into our nose, let's put the words into our shoulders. I wonder what it'll sound like if we play it this way. Just imagine you're a big giant. How will it sound now? So you're always looking at the expressive character and the structural elements of the music and moving and doing things to represent and to capture that. So I think teaching with curiosity. I wonder what it'll sound like if we try it.
What if? I love that.
What if?
Yeah. So, Edward, did you learn this were you a classroom music teacher? Were you trained in classroom and that's where you learnt this?
Yes.
Right, okay. And then when you moved to Tasmania, you were able to approach that in individual lessons, which is what we heard with you working with Beck.
Yes, and also took all of that into the training of early childhood and primary music teachers as well.
Right, okay. Oh, so many different moving pieces in your story. Beck, who's on our team now, she actually shared this video with me. How did you guys come to meet?
Well, when you move from one state to another, you don't know anyone. So we made an attempt to immerse ourselves in the community through the church community. I played A-grade cricket as well at the time down there, and then there was the university community, and my wife taught in schools. So that's how I met Beck in one of the local churches. And Mum and Dad were the most glorious, unbelievably beautiful people you could ever imagine. And her father, Trevor, was an organist. And I remember him accompanying me when I sang a piece from Mendelssohn. And but they asked if I'd teach Rebecca, and I said yes. And so that's how I got into working with Rebecca. She was about 6 years old at the time, and she was absolutely a cutie. You'll know she's also very bright. And the things that I did with Rebecca were outstanding and amazing. Other children can do it, but she was able to do it and pick it up very quickly. And her work in transposition and was just incredible. And you see on the video, I haven't actually watched that video in full. I saw the 5-minute snip, but that's how I started with Beck. And we had other kids come around once a week as well who were learning, and we had a group session together as well. So,
well, you can be very proud of Beck because she's continuing to train the teachers inside our membership using lots of the things that I saw in the teaching that you gave her. So it very much is a round circle that you've created here. So the next stage of your life had you move to Queensland and you went over there to lecture. So tell us, what drew you up there?
Well, when I went to Tasmania in my first tertiary position, they said, you've got 2 contracts, 2 3-year contracts, and after that, that's it. So towards the end of the second one, I was looking around, as you can imagine, because I had 2 young children, and also livelihood was important. But I was in the music education conference circuit at that stage, and I was asked if I would go to Queensland to be 2IC in the music branch there. And unfortunately, that wasn't a good fit for me in terms of sitting in an office wasn't me. I had to be out there doing things. And Yeah, and so fortunately, a secondment came up to Griffith University, and that's where I went for 6 months. And then someone retired, so I got a full-time lecturing position there, which I had to right through to 1998. So that's how I got to Queensland.
Okay. So you were lecturing in the music department. Is that right?
Music education.
Oh, great. Okay. So you're teaching the future classroom and instrumental teachers.
I was teaching early childhood teachers how to incorporate music into their day, which was big for early childhood and primary. And the secondary teachers were trained at the conservatorium, and they came out to me for their music education and curriculum training and how to teach music in the schools. But my first love was with young kids in the primary and early childhood areas, and I had less experience in the secondary area.
So were you doing any of your own teaching at that stage, or was it all teaching teachers?
At that stage, it was all teaching teachers.
Okay.
Yes.
You must have missed the connection with the kids then.
I did, but I tell you what, we were all big kids in the early childhood classes. We were just having so much fun.
I can imagine
with all those singing games and and creative music and getting all of our instruments, and you wanted to try and help them to, in a non-threatening way, to bring music to the kids in the classroom, because not every school had music specialist teachers.
Now, sadly, despite how aligned this was for you and your passion and everything, you mentioned to me earlier that it actually caused you to burn out. Are you able to talk about that and what caused that?
Yes, I can. I'm happy to. Two of my colleagues, we only had a small music education department of four, and two of my colleagues who were partners retired, and that left two of us teaching 22 subjects between us a year. Now, all my
so they
colleagues were teaching.
didn't hire people to fill.
No, I was able to get them. I was able to get some sessional staff in to help. But this is an interesting story in a sense, because you're still not only teaching 11 subjects a year, you're on all the university boards and you're publishing because you want to get promotion and from senior lecturer to professor and so on. So you have to. So I published about 8 peer referee journal articles. And then you have to be involved in the community. So I was chair of the Australian Society for Music Education in Queensland, as I had been in Tasmania as well. So you're doing all of this, and the body sort of gets to a point where it says, well, Edward, that's it, my friend. And I remember the day exactly. I had set up the whole semester and was all ready to go. And I had this big class, putting huge classes together, 200 students. And we were in the aisles dancing and singing and doing all that sort of thing. I went to the dean and said, I need a week's rest anyway. Cut that story short, I never went back. So that was the end of my academic career, and I could never take a job like that again.
So I'm sorry to hear that, because I mean that's such an easy thing that could have been avoided if they had just rehired some quality people. I mean, it just dumbfounds me that the university would make a choice like that.
Well, that would never happen today.
I hope not. I hope not. And today, I guess we would say, look, I need a week's mental health break or something. I can feel this is overwhelming. Did they respond positively to you needing a break? Did they understand things, or was it actually a bit awkward?
No, they happy to give me that week, but things went very, very quickly after that. So if I may, I want to comment. I just don't attribute all of it to that, having too much to do. But I just want to say to your listeners that, for me, I think it was a story that I carried with me most of my life, and that is, if I wanted to be worthy, I had to accomplish. And so you've got to keep doing more, and you've got to do more. And I remember a lovely sentence in my coaching years later: whatever you say yes to, what are you saying no to? So I was saying yes to doing all of this stuff, and I was saying no to my mental and physical health. And so it's an interesting story, and I think I'm not the only one who has this story, because we quite often are in certain phases of our life we're ego-driven, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just, we want to be the best we can possibly be, and we keep pushing ourselves and pushing ourselves, and the more I do, the more success I have, the more accepting I am, and the more people accept me. So I would say that's a big warning sign. Don't listen to the ego.
Yeah, I think that's really common. And you know what? I think it's great that you're speaking to teachers, because I think we're really bad at saying no. We want to help. We're helpers and givers by our very nature. That's why we do what we do. And so when someone asks, oh, can you play for this church service? Or, oh, you'll accompany that child. Or, oh, you can conduct the choir for this term. We go, sure. Particularly if someone says, well, no one else is going to do it. All these kids are going to miss out. And we jump in, don't we? But it's so important to remind ourselves that ego, number one, me, you've got to look after yourself.
Well, we talk about work-life balance, but I use the word work-life integration. I don't think it's possible to balance every area of our life like the spokes of a wheel, but we need to be very mindful of integrating all of those areas. And I wanted to say something about music teachers, and to reiterate what you said, because huge hearts, and they just want to do the best, and we all want to do the best by pupils and by parents and so on. And there's something intrinsically beautiful is not the word, amazing is not the word, but both beautiful and amazing about music teachers.
That's why I love working with music teachers, and I'm sure you've been in the same position. There's something incredibly fulfilling about what we do as teachers, but also about helping other teachers. And that's what I've devoted my career to now this will be the 14th year I've been doing this. So I totally get it. And it's wonderful to be able to have that kind of an impact.
Top Music Pro enables you to be a pro in your own studio, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you don't have to make up all the answers yourself. You have support.
I think of Top Music as the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. This site is the whole pot of gold, and there's gold pieces in there that I didn't even know existed.
I am actually teaching a full studio. They're coming online from miles away, so I am certainly thriving.
So what Tim has done is build a global community of piano teachers who are interested, who are engaged. And when you become part of this community, you feel empowered.
My life is different now because I'm not just in an isolated little studio. I have learnt that there are other people out there going through very similar learning curves and sharing these ideas.
I've really gained a lot of skill sets where my teaching is far more creative, far more innovative. I have resources so that I can add to it things that I didn't know.
My life and my business are different now because I have the three things that I really wanted: less stress, more money, and more time.
It's going to be fun. Like, I got excited about being a piano teacher. It's revolutionized everything that I do.
I think I've become a more thoughtful teacher, a more organized teacher. The quality of my teaching has deepened.
I feel like I can do this. I feel a sense of hope. I love the creativity it fosters and the openness to thinking outside the box, and it's energizing.
Joining Top Music really solidified that. Like, no, this is your career and you can make a career out of this. That has really helped me be proud of what I do.
It's made such a tremendous impact on the way I think about teaching. It keeps your mind open when you have so many ideas.
My best win from being on Top Music Pro is just having a lot more peace of mind as a teacher and as a business owner. It just gives me that less amount of hours that I have to do with research and everything.
It's a really good place to spend a few pounds, a few bucks a month. What you get from it far outweighs what you have to pay into it.
My biggest win with Top Music Pro was increased student retention and increased income. I have a lot more confidence in how I'm teaching, and I have the resources that I need when I do have questions.
I probably went from about 35 students to maybe like 65. I ended up doing 3 classes and I had a waiting list.
If I hadn't signed up with Top Music Pro, I probably wouldn't have realized that teaching piano is a real job and you can build your whole career around it.
I just wanted to think about, for teachers who might be listening who may be feeling this sense that they're nearing this point where they've said yes to too much, or you know, the combination of family and work and stresses of running their studio, etc., are piling up and getting too much. Would you have any advice or thoughts for those people?
Well, here I am pausing because it's a tricky situation. Today's police force, music teachers, educators, nurses, these sorts of cultures are just really, really stressful. Now, music teachers who are in private studios have their whole own set of stresses on them, and well, got their family and their students and their parents. I want to jump straight in and say, as humans, we have this observing mind and we have a thinking mind. And the thinking mind is the mind, our body-based mind, and it's where all of our thoughts come from, 60 to 80,000 a day, and a lot of them are negative. And all our suffering and all of our stress and all of our anxiety comes from our thinking mind, because what we do is fuse and attach to those thoughts and those stories. We've got a part of being human, it's just the word metacognition, I suppose. We are able to observe and watch our thoughts. That's something unique. I don't think any other animals can do that. Now, in my book, How to Put Hunting Together Again, which is the story about putting my life together after burnout, I talk about the blue sky and metaphor. And I talk about the blue sky like our observing mind. Where does the blue sky finish and end? It doesn't. So we all share the blue sky. So the observing mind is the one mind in which we all share. Whereas the thinking mind, it's our personal body-based mind, and it's the egoic mind, and it's the mind that gets us into trouble if we attach and a fuse to those thoughts. So here's my answer. For us to be aware that we have this observing mind that can watch what's going on all the time, and almost to the point now where I just watch my thinking mind and I laugh. It's absurd. I'm fusing to, people say, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, no, there's depression there, but you're not depressed unless you actually say, I am depressed, or I am angry, or I am pissed off, or I am afraid, or I am jealous. As soon as you say, I am, it's self-fulfilling prophecy, so you become that. So I think the question was, if I remember, what advice could I give to other teachers? Understand that your observing mind is your saviour. It's the thing that's going to actually pull you through, because it's what we call, and a lot of other authors have called, the true self. And our thinking mind is the false self, our egoic mind. It's no fault of our own, because after about 2 years, we're conditioned to believe that this thinking mind is reality and that's who we really are. But there's an aspect of us which is love, peace and joy, and that never goes wrong. Nothing ever goes wrong there. It all goes wrong in the thinking mind. Anyway, teachers, look, if you can understand what I'm getting at there, it's a bit esoteric, and I know a music podcast is probably not supposed to be talking about this stuff. But
no, I don't normally talk about this, so it's nice to touch on it.
If I had known more about that when I don't think I would have burnt out. Well, I may have, but I would have been able to deal with the burnout much, much better.
I think we definitely will put a link to your book in our show notes as well, and we can talk about that at the end as well. I think to me it sounds a little bit like at the simplest level, it's about making sure we have time to pause and breathe occasionally. Because with everything that goes on, and pick. I've got children, and you've had children. Like so many of us, busy families. There's activity, there's action. We're often teaching after school hours into evenings. Where's dinner? It's just go, 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 and there's no time to even really think, to get into either of the thinking minds. So almost that first step is just find the time to breathe and pause.
That's the central thing, which I want to say now and to reinforce it. When I learned to breathe and understand the importance of breath, and then to have to learn mindfulness and to actually meditate as well. Unless we give time daily to our breathing and set out, even if it's 10 minutes, I have an app called Calm.
Oh, Calm's great. I love Calm. Yeah.
Every day, and I use it every day. And it's time to be still and time to breathe and time to reflect.
Well, look, listeners, as you can probably tell, Edward moved on to a new career after the burnout as a life coach, which you did for many, many years. So I'm interested to know, I can see, I think anyone listening would see the progression. Okay, you've pulled yourself out of this hole, and it would have been awful, I'm sure. And so you've then gone, I want to help other people, I assume, being the teacher that you are. I want to help other people avoid this. Is that how the life coaching came about? And how does it even work? Do you do training for it, or do you put up your hand? Can I say that I'm a life coach? How does it work?
Well, lots of good questions there. Suddenly, my wife followed me, burnout 2 years after me. So there we were, two salary earners, all of a sudden without any salary and nothing. And how do you pay the bills, and how do you eat, and how do you... it was an interesting time. But the story goes back to a link. Right back in 1994, I read a book called The On-Purpose Person, Making Your Life Make Sense. Sometimes the book comes up along your path just when you need it, and that was one of them. Another one prior to that was Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But these were books that were way, way, way out of my reading list, because I had been an academic and I've been publishing papers and reading academic journals, and these personal development books came in. Anyway, that was 94, and my wife went, and we did a week's training in Orlando, Florida. And here we are now, 2000, burnt out. And I think, what do I do now? Well, I bought the license to teach that stuff, and I just sat and gathered dust for 8 years or 6 years or something. I thought, here's the chance. I remember one day someone said, Edward, when I did my first workshop, Edward, somebody else can take your job at the university, but no one else can help people find their purpose in life. You're the only one in Australia who can do that. And I thought, wow, that was a big thing to say. And so a lot of my first life coaching was based around that program, one-day program. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people did that. And it's still a wonderful thing to help people find their purpose in life. And person is not necessarily their mission or their job or their career, but it's their essence, it's their spiritual DNA and who they are. And our parents gave us one name, but we have given ourselves another. And mine is igniting enthusiasm. That's my purpose in life. And that came a lot by my students at university at Gifford. They have to give feedback. What's the strengths of this teacher and this lecturer? And pretty well 99% said his passion and his enthusiasm. And I thought, wow, this must be something there. And my grandkids and my kids and everybody says there's some sort of something, that comes out, and so it's not a big blowtorch, it's like igniting, just a spark. So I have to do that for myself, because I've been in a fairly precarious position in the last 3 years, which you probably know. And so I was interviewed recently in another podcast by someone from Germany who I met 20 years ago, and he said, Edward, you helped me find my purpose. And he had a whole interview about this, and we talked about that. So that's another thing. But you asked me how I got into life coaching, and then I realised back then life coaching wasn't going to pay the bills, because I'm talking about 2000, and it became more popular later on. So I transitioned into business coaching and careers coaching. So I still ran my on-purpose workshops alongside of those. So yes, you have to be trained to be a life coach. It's usually there are a lot of life coaching academies around, and you just can't say, "I'm a life coach" or "I'm a business coach."
Well, it's not on my radar, don't worry.
No, but you just can't say because you sit down and tell people what to do. In fact, coaching is not about telling, it's all about asking. And that's the beauty of it, because that's where you have that whole curiosity coming to help people, because you're asking the right questions, the key questions, the big questions, and they have to face themselves and come up with their own answers. There are times, of course, in business coaching where people want to know, well, Edward, just tell me what I need to do. And that's fair enough. They're paying big bucks to be helped in their business. And it's interesting how a lot of people are very, very good at something, whether it's in psychology or whether it's in music teaching or whatever, but no one's ever taught them how to actually run a business.
That's right. It's something that we focus on a lot inside our membership, is helping music teachers with that business side of thing. All important. I mean, there's no point being a great teacher if you either can't get students or you can't keep students or you're not making any money. It's so important.
Absolutely.
So, you touched on just before, and people may have missed it, that things have changed for you around 2020, I think it was, and sadly 2021 not in a good way at all. But you said that you're really happy to share this as well as another teaching point or another thing that we can learn from. So would you like to tell people a story of what's happened more recently?
Well, in September the 24th, that's just over 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And that came as quite a shock. I remember my wife and I in the local hospital, we were getting a Zoom call from Perth from a specialist, because I had quite a few tests and things. And in fact, we'd been up in August in Geraldton looking at wildflowers. And I was popping 12 Panadol a day just to stop this stomach pain. As soon as I came back, went to the doctor, and we had a scan, and there it was on the pancreas. But by the time we got around to dealing with it all and going through the medical procedure, things were very precarious, and to the point where it had gone. And there were 12 in the liver by the time we started treatment in October 21, as well as a 3-centimetre in the pancreas. So here we are, 3 years later. Well, back then in September 24, I was told, well, you've got 3 months at the most. So,
Edward, I can't even imagine getting this kind of a news, and it just must be heartbreaking for you, for everyone around you, your wife, and I just like amazing, particularly knowing now you've survived 3 years. Longer than was expected. I mean, that's incredible, and obviously a tribute to your own your personality, your constitution, the work that you've done, I'm sure. Tell us how do you cope with that kind of a news for people who may be dealing with it now or maybe in the future?
Well, certainly it's a team effort. I have drafted a little article, I call it my 10 M's for managing pancreatic cancer, but up at the top there's meaning, and that's your why and your purpose, and why do I want to keep on living? And of course, medical science has been a huge one too. And then there's the other things like mindfulness and meditation, and I call it menu. Diet is really important, and movement I call in terms of exercise really important. And I think a huge one is my identity, understanding who I really am. And I've got to the point where I understand that I'm not a body, I'm free, and as God created me. And so I think knowing that I'm love, joy, and peace, and I am at peace with where things have been and gone. Right now, things aren't looking too good at all, and I'm glad we're doing this today and not in 2 months' time, because you might not have got me.
But you're still smiling. You're still smiling.
Oh, well, why not? Because I'm love, peace, and joy. That's all I can be, Otherwise, what else would you be? You'd be screwed up and worried, and you'd be absolutely no example to anyone. I mean, it's hard. We've got to let go of that. We're attached to so many things, including our stories, but, our last big attachments, I think, are to this body-based self and to our loved ones. So I'm starting chemo again tomorrow with the hope I can buy a bit more time to get to Christmas for my loved ones. And who knows what's going to happen in January, because there's other things coming in medical science all the time. Now, I have total peace of mind, Tim, and I can smile at you. I just love the fact that you're doing all of this work with your music teachers. They need all the love and support and help, and both technical and relational support, because it's a tough gig out there. And being a music teacher in the studio on your own, of course, you mix and interact, but then they've all got families and lives to live as well. And I still go back to the blue sky, but underneath the blue sky is the wind and the rain and the weather. That's all their thinking mind thoughts. You know, they come and they go, and they come and they go, and they come and they go. But the observing mind just stays there, and we can just watch what's going on. So that's a big part of my piece.
Yeah, the storm. I can kind of see the metaphor extending to storms coming and going, and seasons changing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, there is, and I imagine for most people, there must be a point where you have to make a decision when things like this happen. How are you going to respond? Are you going to crawl under a blanket and be miserable and no doubt hasten what's going to happen? Or do you make a conscious decision to turn around and go, no, actually, here's my purpose, and I'm going to stick with it? Did you get a sense that there is that moment for people in this situation?
I see it all the time when I go in for treatment. I've had 43 three-day chemo treatments already in that time, as well as some pretty heavy-duty radiation. But you see some people just feel so sorry for them because they're emaciated and hanging along. And it's interesting, you know, in my book, chapter 2, it's a bit heavy duty, and it's a lot of the stuff I've been talking about, but there's the stimulus. We can't really control what happens to us. We've only got control over how we respond. And we can either respond proactively or we can react negatively through fear. So one's a love response and one's a fear response. And that's the thing. And going back to all of that stuff I was doing early on in music teaching, I was able to be proactive, not like in a lot of the cultures today, you're always reacting to the stresses and what's happening. And I had all of that beautiful time just being able to be creative and proactive with my students and loving it with them and laughing and with joy and dance and music. And there's something that, you know, just lifts your spirit when you're immersed in music beyond the technical level. You know, there's knowing about music. Well, we can all know about it. And then there's the skills of music. We can all learn the skills. But then there's the understanding of music and how the expressive character and the structure puts together. And at the end of it, it's knowing what's what it is we really love and value and what sings to our heart and gives us meaning. So it's thank you for keeping music going in the world, because you're doing a great thing, Tim.
Well, thank you. It's not me. It's all the hardworking teachers that we support. Wow, I feel we've come to a natural conclusion, and I really have enjoyed taking this journey with you. So thank you, Edward. I wonder if there's a way. I mean, you've shared lots anyway, but is there a way to pull some of the threads together? Your life coaching, your music teaching, your cancer fighting. Is there something that you could pull together to share with us or round off the conversation? I know I'm asking a lot.
Well, probably one thing in particular, just a lot of people don't understand their true essence, their purpose. They unconsciously probably it's there, and it's there with everybody. They're born with it, but to actually consciously be aware of it and live it day to day is the golden thread that links all the stories and all the seasons of our life. And know your purpose and just be it 24/7. And sitting above that is be who you really are, your true self, and understand that all your suffering and unhappiness comes from your attachment to the false self. And, you know, in a twinkling of an eye, you can just change and shift that. That's a big choice that we can make as humans. And you were talking about how did I cope? I think the biggest thing was understanding my true identity. I can only smile and be at peace because I understand that.
I wonder did you want to mention quickly your book and where people can get that?
Oh, thank you. I didn't come on the program to sell because but there's a lot of little stories in there, and that one about the blue sky, and there's a beautiful one about the white wolf and the black wolf, which is a link to what we're doing. It's called Broken to Whole, How to Put Humpty Together Again.
And where can people find it?
They can find it on the website, brokentoWhole.com.au. And they can also find it in a link from my website, edwardgifford.com.
Wonderful. All right. We'll put links to all of this in our show notes so that it's there for people to refer to. You've had an untold impact on so many people, Edward, clearly, through both the music teaching, your coaching, but just being you. And I can tell, like I've got a buzz from just being around you. So you definitely do live your life passion and purpose. And I just want to say thank you to all the people that you've impacted. Clearly, you've had an outsized effect.
Yes, and my love to Beck.
I will pass it on. She will be listening to this as soon as we finish recording. I'll send it through to her because she's really excited to connect us. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Edward. I only wish you the best for your treatment. Sounds a little bit grim tomorrow, but you've been there and done it, and you've got a purpose. You know what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and my very, very good wishes and warm regards to all of your listeners and to all of your teachers.
Thank you so much.
And thank you. Thank you. Bye, Tim.
I hope you enjoyed today's chat. Certainly emotional and moving for me, and hopefully has given you a few strategies that you can think about in your own teaching. Make sure you do go and check out Edward's book. If you would like to find out more about that, just head over to our show notes page, topmusic.co/episode 389. We'll give you all the links that you need. That's it from me this week. I'm Tim Topham, and you've been listening to the Topcast. Thanks so much for joining me. Speak to you again next week. Bye. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support, and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.